Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books and I'll let you know what I thought about them, and we always start with the pick of the week. And this week's pick of the week is Punisher number 11. This book, yes, this book, The Punisher, a Marvel comic, continues to impress me issue by issue, now making the pick of the week on a regular basis. I am loving what Jason Aaron is doing in the pages of Punisher. This is probably, I gotta really think about this before I be as bold as to say this, but I could be persuaded probably by myself to declare this as the best Punisher run I have ever read. Now, how it ends is going to be a major factor in determining if it is the best, but it is definitely one of the most exciting, one of the most nuanced, one of the most well-rounded, one of the most in-depth approaches to Frank Castle and his story, his origins, his mission, who he is, what he does, and how that's going to project into the future. This book is awesome. Now, we've seen type of things like, we've seen stories that are kind of like this, right? For instance, in this issue, before I get too excited, in this issue, Frank, who is now being possessed by the beast of the hand, the Avengers come after him. We've seen this before where the Avengers are like, Frank, you've gone too far, we got to put a stop to this, and they have a fight. We've never seen it on the scope and scale as this one. This was absolutely top-notch. Great stuff. But what's even more impressive about this book is the work on Maria Castle. Now, I haven't read every single Punisher comic, and if you can think of a Punisher comic out there that dives into who Maria Castle is, you let me know, because I've never seen anything that approaches her like they do here. Now, obviously, throughout the majority of the Punisher books, she's dead, right? Her death is one of the contributing factors to Frank becoming the Punisher, but you get some clarification, not just on her character, but on certain choices in her life, how that was going to affect their relationship, her and Frank, and with the kids. There's a lot of cool stuff here, okay? And then you got two artists with two completely different styles, Jesus Saez and Paul Ezeketa. You got two completely different styles of artwork that work so well together because tonally, they each do what they're supposed to do. Saez is doing the modern day stuff. It feels extra dimensional, right? Like meaning that it looks like it's got dimension, but it also looks like extra dimensional because there's God type, evil elder god, Hydra beast, hand beast type stuff going on here. So that's awesome. But then you got Paul's work, which is a little bit more gritty, a little bit more raw, a little bit more visceral, and that's the stuff from the past. So a lot of illuminations on the past of Frank and Maria, their relationship, their dynamic, and a lot of just cool, awesome superhero action as well. This book slaps. Now, I don't like this issue as much as, say, the last one. The last one was just jaw-dropping every single moment, but this one had those moments. It continues that momentum, and I gotta say, y'all, Punisher Born by Ennis and Robertson, that's my favorite Punisher story, but this might be taking the cake. Also, speaking of taking the cake, might as well make it the cover of the week. That's right, this is the Matteo Scalera variant. That's just awesome. Love the composition there. You love the use of color, the use of the negative space almost, if you will, because there's no lines drawn for Frank's outline there. It's just all color. I think that's really fantastic. Matteo Scalera is a great artist. I've met him. He's a super cool dude. Moving on. Also from Marvel, we got Warlock Rebirth issue number 1. I got to meet Ron Mars last year at Memphis Comic Expo. You definitely need to check out Memphis Comic Expo this year because not only will I be there, there are some great guests there like Garth Ennis, like Glenn Fabry, like Kevin Eastman, like Brian Pulido, like Alan Davis, like Ann Nocenti, and the list just keeps going. Christopher Priest. I'm forgetting people. It's such an insane list. Chris Pachalo. Anyway, when I met Ron Mars, I was asking him about Silver Surfer Rebirth, telling him I was really liking it. I thought it was cool that him and Ron got back together and kind of teamed up to go back to that era. And he said, yes, and there's something else in the works that we're doing together. as a follow-up to Silver Surfer Rebirth. Well, here it is. It's Warlock Rebirth, setting it back in the 90s. It's got that flair. It's got that vibe. Now, Ron Lim's artwork is a little bit more... It's different today than it used to be. There's some kind of texture. There's something missing, whether it's in the inking or whether it's in the coloring. There's something missing from the original kind of groundedness, right? And it feels a little bit more thin, the line does. However, maybe he's working digitally. I have no idea. The artwork is serviceable. It's good. It's fine. And it throws you back into that era. Now, if you've never read a Warlock comic book, this will let you know who Warlock is. And it'll give you that sense of Warlock from the 90s, the Infinity Watch Warlock, right? But it also does continue to carry over some of the threads from Silver Surfer Rebirth. So I liked this book. I thought it was cool. And if you are a fan of like Warlock and the Infinity Watch from back in the day, yeah, this book's totally for you. You definitely need to check it out. Then we got Amazing Spider-Man issue number 24, and just like the last issue, not as bad as the 2 issues before that. So 23 and 24 were pretty solid because we're actually getting Zeb Wells to move a little bit forward in telling us what's going on. What happened to Peter to piss everybody off? Why is Norman redesigning costumes for Peter? Why is Mary Jane separate from Peter with 2 kids of her own with some other random dude? We're starting to explain some of that stuff, and I like the movement forward. However, all this stuff with this like God dude and this time travel stuff, it's so freaking confusing. I love high concept, crazy, superhero type stuff, but even I'm reading this and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. Who are these people? Why do I care? Just tell me what Peter did. And we're starting to learn it, but it's all right. It's all right. The problem with this run of Amazing Spider-Man is it has been a bit inconsistent. That being said, I liked some of the steps that were made in the forward direction here in issue number 24. They promise big, major things in issue 25. We'll see. Then we got Red Goblin. This is the Philip Tan variant that almost made cover of the week, so I got to show you the runner up there. I freaking love that cover. It's just, this is an awesome cover, to be honest. Red Goblin, Alex Packnadell, friend of the show, but doing a great job with Normie Osborn. I was really nervous about this book, because even though I really respect the work of Alex Packnadell, I think he's a very intelligent writer. He understands theme, he understands character, he understands pace, he understands concept, how to make it all work together. I was nervous about little Normie Osborn having a symbiote being the Red Goblin, but I'm sold on it. I think there's a lot of movement here in issue number 3 too to show the bond between what's the name? Rascal. Rascal's the name of the symbiote. There's some movement forward, and there's some things that are set up to show like how Normie's going to almost show compassion to this symbiote, but I liked it. But Norman's been kidnapped, Normie's trying to save him, and in order to save him, Normie has to fully let Rascal take over and unleash the true Red Goblin, and it is awesome. I mean, we've seen Red Goblin before when Norman had the Carnage symbiote and all this stuff. This is that same vibe, but it does feel a little bit different. It feels very kinetic and energetic and dynamic. Kinetic, energetic, dynamic. 3 words that pretty much mean the same thing. That's what I'm good at. Alex Packnadell and company are really good at this book. Who is the artist? I need to make sure I know this artist. It's Jan Bazaldua. The art in this book is pretty freaking dope. I really like the art. Like I said, it's kinetic, it's dynamic, it's energetic. It leaps off the page. Then we got Hallows Eve, issue number 2. It's all right. It's all right. I thought issue number 1 was all right. I thought issue number 2 was all right. Hallows Eve is an interesting concept for a character. She's basically like a super villain. She has all these masks that she got from Limbo. She puts on the mask. She takes on the personification of whatever the mask represents. She puts on the vampire mask, she becomes a vampire, including the hunger. She puts on a werewolf mask, she becomes a werewolf, including being able to bite people and turn them into werewolves. That happened in issue number 1. We're moving on with that here in issue number 2, setting that up. She's trying to figure out more about her powers, the roots of them, the origins, things like that, why, the benefits, and the... what's the opposite of benefits? The repercussions, the terrible things that can come along with this power. It's decent enough. It's all right. The artwork is not too bad. It's a little dull, to be honest. It could have a little bit more kinetic, dynamic, energetic energy, but it's all right. It's all right. Then we got Hellcat here with issue number 2. I know a lot of people, I saw in the comments, see in my personal life, that really liked Hellcat number 1. They thought I was very harsh on Hellcat number 1. Okay. So I read issue 2, with an open mind, excited, wanting to see what everybody else was seeing, and I just ain't seeing it. This book was boring, it was dull, it was stupid. I didn't like it at all. If you like it, I'm not calling you boring, dull, or stupid. I'm just calling the books you like boring, dull, and stupid. Anyway, just kidding. We like what we like, and we should celebrate that. But Hellcat #2 is just not clicking for me. I like Sleepwalker. I guess I'm not. Patsy Walker. I could give it. I don't really. There's nothing about this book that's pulling me in. There's nothing about this story. There's nothing. It's a little. I think too confusing. The art could shine. It could provide texture, but it's too sparse to do that. Its composition is wonky too. There's too much negative space that's not reading properly for me, or working with the lettering or the story or something. Something off about this book that feels kind of amateurish to me. And I think this is going to be my last one, because I know a lot of people like that book, and I want to keep shitting on it, if you like it. Because one book that I love that a lot of people don't like and they shit on is The Excellent. The Excellent, issue #2. It's actually volume 2, issue #2, season 2, #2, whatever you want to call it. It's the next chapter of the X-Force Ecstatics Excellent Peter Milliken, Laura Allred, Mike Allred saga. So that's enough for me. I have loved the entirety of what Allred and Milligan have been doing on this title since they started way back in like 2001, 2002, 2003, whenever that was. I remember that. X-Force 116, I want to say it was 114, 116. I think New X-Men was 114, it was 116. First Marvel comic in forever that dropped the comic code approval authority or whatever. But anyway, I love Mike Allred. I love Laura Allred. I really like Peter Milligan. If the Allreds are on a book, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to like it. That's just the way it is. This is an interesting kind of take. Now, the Ecstatics and X-Force, this whole work has always been kind of like a look at celebrity, right? And now in the new age, and this is what's crazy, is this book started in the early 2000s, right? Took a big hiatus, obviously. Now they're back doing it. But back then, they were unraveling some of these themes. They're incredibly still relevant today, and now they're able to actually evolve those themes more fully into today and deal with things like social media and influencing, following, and doxing and stuff like that, right? And that's kind of what they deal with in here. So I love the story. I love these characters. It's zany, it's weird, it's kooky, and you at least got more than one time in this issue of Zeitgeist just puking on somebody with acid vomit and killing them. That's my kind of comics. Let's jump over to DC. We got Superboy, The Man of Tomorrow, issue #1. I was excited to read this because I'm a big Connor Kent fan. Con-El, that's my jam. Superboy, I was there. Adventures of Superman 500 at the end, and then 501 and on. When I met Carl Kiesel and Tom Grummett, I brought a bunch of Superboy stuff for them to sign because I'm a fan of this character, but I was not a fan of this book. It was all right. It did a decent job of just, hey, this is Connor Kent, this is who he is, this is like a side adventure of his, it's interesting enough, and then it gets to this ending, and I'm like, okay, they can pull this together if they have a really impactful ending, and we get to it, I'm like, what? I don't care. Like, that's supposed to be a big deal? Really? Some people I don't know? Anyway, the book was all right. It's not terrible. It's not super bad. The artwork was fine. There's some moments where the acting in the artwork is almost a little bit overdone or something. Maybe it's the coloring that's kind of off for me. I don't know what it is, but there was something about this book. It's probably more in the dialogue, probably more in the pace and flow of the story. It was decent enough, but basically Connor's like, yo, there's way too many super people here. Let me go out into the galaxy and see if people need some help, because everything's taken care of here in Metropolis. So he's trying to find his place. He's been missing for a while. It's all right. It's all right. I wanted it to be a lot better. Then we got DC Silent Tales. This is all books. These are all short stories. 6 short stories by Gustavo Duarte. First of all, I really like it. It's cute. It's charming. They're all silent tales. I mean, every comic book technically is silent, but they're wordless for the most part. There's a Cyborg story, there's a Harley Quinn story, Joker, there's a Superman story, there's a Zatanna story that I thought was super charming. No pun intended. Then we got a Lobo story at the back, but I really liked it. It's nice, it's fun. $5.99, thick, silent stuff. Just great cartooning from Gustavo Duarte, and I thought that was pretty solid. Superman #3. Josh Williamson, Jamal Campbell. This almost made Pick of the Week. This was almost Pick of the Week. Now, it's a light week, but Superman #3 was awesome. Josh Williamson continues to improve this series issue to issue. Now, Issue 3 wraps up the first arc, so what does everything perfectly. It's utilizing major Superman villains like Luthor, Livewire, Parasite, utilizing them in interesting ways, playing with those concepts. It has really powerful artwork, great coloring, some great moments. Superman is infected with like little parasite people. He even puts on a suit similar to the space suit, protective suit that he was wearing in the animated series. We are hitting all of those vibes. The artwork is super awesome in its perspective, in its composition, in its energy, in the momentum that it's bringing forward. And it also, at the end of the arc here, sets up perfectly this direction for Superman. I cannot be more excited. People at my shop are loving this book. I'm hearing lots of good stuff out there about it. They finally did it. They got Superman to be a truly top-tier DC book. I hope this momentum continues, because 3 issues, it just keeps getting better, and this one really cemented my full interest in that book that I've already been digging. Batman, Superman, World's Finest here with issue number 14. Who killed Simon Staggs? Well, a lot of people think it's Metamorpho. Other people think it's Bruce Wayne, and Superman's kind of caught in the middle playing the game. Anyway, so Clark Kent finds out through some sources that Bruce Wayne is the one who killed Simon Stagg. Nah, maybe not. Metamorpho's out on this rampage of revenge. Bruce Wayne is now not able to go out as Batman because he has to keep alibis, so Superman's having to team up with Dick Grayson when he was Robin to try to solve this whole mystery. A lot of it does kind of get solved, but this is just such a great book. A very classic vibe to it. Mark Waid handles the characters, the era, and the story so freaking well. And y'all, I don't even need to keep telling you guys how amazing Dan Mora is on the artwork, especially aided by the incredible, capable coloring of Tamara Bonvillain. Her coloring, she has been snubbed at the Eisners year after year. This stuff is absolutely amazing. Mora and Bonvillain working together, that's some really, really sharp stuff. And I know most of y'all agree with me. It's dynamic, kinetic, energetic. Dynamic, kinetic, energetic. DKE. It's DKE. Sure. Then we get, it's great. It's an awesome book. World's Finest is great. Then we got Nightwing 103. I don't really like the last few issues of Nightwing, but I actually like this one a little bit better. Probably because I stopped reading that backup story. Completely meaningless to me, but Nightwing's been pretty solid. It's dealing with the idea of this little girl who's had her soul sold to Neron, so the Titans now have to go to the underworld, and it's just kind of had a better flow and momentum and pace for me than the previous 2 issues, and it has some revelations about this young woman that are tied into Batman history, and I really like that. I really appreciate that. Tom Taylor's doing a great job here, so Nightwing continues to be pretty freaking solid. Then we got The Flash, issue 797. 1 Minute War is done. We only got a handful of issues left for Jeremy Adams, so he's been a very consistent, solid writer on Flash. I didn't really dig on 1 Minute War, but I'm excited to see how he finishes off this run. 797 is just a nice, like, smaller focused story where it's not about Barry, it's not about Wally, but it's about the kids, it's about Ace. But I liked it. It had a sense of fun. It sets up a lot of stuff for like the future super teens or super kids or whatever. You got an appearance from Damian Wayne and Jonathan Kent from the Super Sons era. So that's always a nice fun throwback. And in fact, if you wanted to actually turn this idea of these kid superheroes forming a team at some point in the future, if you just wanted to have that book, Jeremy Adams would be really great to write that because he wrote those characters, those kids, so well. Then we have DCeased, War of the Undead Gods, issue number 8, the final issue. Allegedly. We'll see. We've been promised the final issue of DCeased before, but this does feel like a final issue, and I'll tell you what, they really nailed it. One of the things I love about DCeased, now that it's over, I can say this probably for the last time, but what could have easily just been DC's answer to Marvel Zombies actually became something with heart. It became something with tragedy, drama, comedy, heroism, adventure, boisterousness, excitement, action, sadness, melancholy. Just such a well-rounded book. It's got every element. It's horrific. It's funny. I mean, it's all these things. Everything you would want out of a story, out of a tale, out of an epic is all here. A very satisfying conclusion. Brought a little bit of a tear to my eye. Maybe just a tinge. Maybe just a tinge. You know, maybe there was smoke in my eye or something. But DCeased, I've loved it all the way through. The only problem is that Trevor didn't do the entirety of the artwork, but when he kicks in, it really kicks back into gear. So I'm glad they saved him for the second half of the book and not the first half, because that really worked. Let's jump over to Image. And from Image, we have TerrorWar, issue number 1. So this is a new one from Saladin Ahmed and Dave Acosta with inking by Jay Leistein. And let's just talk about the importance of the inkers. We have books, for instance, that don't really utilize inkers. And, you know, it's time for a lesson here with Mr. Bills. So the artist, Alex Lenz, capable, decent artist. You know what? Let's not use him. That's a bad example, actually. I take back some of the stuff I said about the art in Hellcat now. All right, Dowling on Hallows Eve. Bear with me. Okay, Dowling on... Okay, so we just have one person listed as an artist. This is probably done digitally. And let's take a look at something. All right, you see that? There's not a lot of background work, nothing like that. Look at that. Look at that. This is what an inker does for you. This is what having somebody else, not just to trace the image, but to provide true depth and dimension. It's not just tracing. I like that joke too. I love Chasing Amy. That's a funny bit. This is what an inker will do for your work. It adds texture. Because sometimes, especially, and I get it, under a deadline crunch, you don't have time to bring the texture, but look at that. Look at that. I'm just saying. Maybe it's an unfair comparison, but I was really amazed at the artwork here because of the inker. Lots more texture, lots more depth, lots more dimension. And the book itself is actually really cool. So this is a world that is under attack at times by terrors. And what I mean by that is like something that somebody nearby fears the most. For instance, there is a bit in the beginning when this dude is being chased by a giant cartoon frog. Because it was like a thing that terrified him when he was a kid, right? There are certain people that have certain skills where they can use their mental fortitude to stand up against the fear, turn that into brain bullets, and then that. And great artwork, a cool story, an interesting world. This was a top-notch debut from Image Comics. I think it's one of Ahmed's first Image comics. And I know Acosta from the Elvira stuff, right? But the artwork here was super solid, especially because you got an inker. So can we give a station of the week to Jay Leistein? Leaston? Jay? Station. Keep it up. Then we got Hitomi, issue number 5. This is the final issue of the series. I've enjoyed this series a lot. It's about this dude. He's an African samurai, so he's out of place, but he's also a Ronin. And then there's this young girl who is training under him who wants to go on this road of vengeance to have revenge on those who murdered her father, who is this dude who's training her, right? There was a moment in this book where I was like, we're supposed to know this, right? Then there's a revelatory moment here at the end here. I liked the ending. It was satisfying enough, but it didn't quite click for me as well as some of these other issues did. In particular, issue 1 and maybe 2, 3. 4 was pretty solid too, but 5, it's a really good ending. I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to maybe one day read all 5 of these issues together. I think it would be a nice samurai tale that's a little bit different, but still has some of those same familiar tropes that we love. But I love the art in this book. I thought the art was phenomenal. And I think the art is phenomenal here. In fact, this might be Brett Booth's best work on Gunslinger Spawn. Gunslinger Spawn, issue number 19. Now, a couple weeks ago, I got King Spawn, number whatever it was, and I didn't get the Mark Brooks cover because I liked the variant cover better. I thought it was very striking. It may even made cover of the week, I'm not sure. But the variant cover on this one was just all right, so now I'm going to have to get that King Spawn Mark Brooks cover, so I have the connecting covers, whatever. So that's cool. Anyway, y'all, Brett Booth doing just a hell of a job here on Gunslinger Spawn. Todd McFarlane doing a hell of a job, actually. Some great Spawn action, a team-up between Spawn and Gunslinger Spawn. You got angels getting blown apart. You got Spawn with giant guns. You got Javi with like giant holes being burst out of them. Lots of cool, gnarly type stuff. Exactly what you want out of a Spawn book. This, right now, over the last few months, and I love King Spawn, but this is really starting to become my favorite Spawn book. Brett Booth has a lot to do with that. He brings an energy to it. He brings a flow to it. He brings detail, texture. Is there an inker? There's an inker. Adelso Corona. Can we give a special station to Corona there? Because this is what happens when you have an inker. All right, anyway, moving on. Sometimes you don't need an inker, like if you're Peter Kowalski, who has been doing this as well as Where Monsters Lie. But this is another Dark Horse book with him doing the artwork. It is written by Steve Fox. All Eight Eyes is about a world populated by giant spiders. But it does it in a very kind of like grounded, low-key, secret kind of way with a little tinge of mysticism maybe there. I don't really know, but it's not quite campy. It's not Kingdom of the Spiders. It's not Eight-Legged Freaks. I appreciate the approach, and I love this variant cover by James Stokoe. It'd been nice to see him do the interiors, but Kowalski does a great job on the interiors himself. The last issue of Where Monsters Lie, I said, felt a little bit rushed. Maybe it's because he's doing 2 damn books at the same time. Plus, special appearance by the Budweiser dog. Was it Spud? All Eight Eyes, by the way, was pretty solid. I liked it. Don't expect too much, but I enjoyed it. Street Fighter Masters Cammy. Why not, man? I like Cammy. I read the Chung-Li one. It was fine. I'll read these. If they're just one-shots for this and Darkstalkers, I'll read them. You know? You got sexy people. You got Street Fighter. You got Darkstalkers. You got action. You got Bison. A little bit of Bison, maybe. It's kind of a tease. Anyway, this was a solid enough book. Basically, Cammy is tasked because some Bison has brainwashed supermodels into being his assassins. So Cammy has to go under a cover as a supermodel. Now, it was a pretty solid book. I liked it. It was interesting. It was fun. It didn't try to... It wasn't trying to change the world. It wasn't trying to do too much. It was doing exactly what it needed to do. It didn't really have too much of a spotlight on Cammy, though. So that was slightly disappointing. There's some variant covers. If anybody ever gets a hold of one of those Great Wall of Comics exclusive variants, or the Carnivore Comics one, and you'll know which one I'm talking about. The Diego da Silva. I met that dude at MegaCon. Holy cow. Anyway, in particular, if anybody knows how to get a hold of one of those Great Wall of Comics Cammy exclusive covers, I would like that in my life. Anyway, Street Fighter Masters Cammy. If you're a Street Fighter fan, if you're a Cammy fan, it's worth checking out. Then we got The Mighty Barbarians, issue number 1. This is a Michael Morisi book from Ablaze. It's taking all of these different barbarian characters like Kull. I'm forgetting the names of some of the others, but like Kull, Thongor. There's a few others. Anasi, Burka, Nanook, Morgan Le Fay. Different characters, barbaric type characters, being all formed together as a team. So it's like, think League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but with barbarian sword and sorcery type characters. So it actually worked. It was cool. This whole issue is basically putting together the team. Michael Morisi knows how to put together a script. He knows how to put together a first issue. I liked the art. Coloring could have been, was a little dark, could have brightened up. No, it's not, but we don't need it brightened up too much. In fact, just leave it alone. I'd rather have it look like this than like, and actually, I take that back. Well, no, there's some pages that printed maybe a little bit. Anyway, I like it. I thought it was super solid. I'm going to continue to read this because, like I said, it's like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. A lot of literary characters formed together into a team, but think sword and sorcery barbaric characters. So that's pretty cool. Soko is a new one from Sumerian Comics. This one was all right. I love the artwork by Antonio Fuso. I'm a big fan of his work. There's a chase scene in the beginning of it that I thought was really cool, utilized very well, especially with the lettering. I thought that was dope. The story, so it takes place in like Serbia, I think, and it's about these cops. And it's crime fiction, and it's centered around these two cops who you see on the cover here. But there's a twist that I don't want to spoil if you're going to read this book. The twist was interesting. In fact, if it wasn't for that twist, I would be like, I'm not coming back for this book. I love Antonio's artwork, but the story never grabbed me. It kind of felt just procedural, run-of-the-mill, average, ordinary. Nothing really exceptional or memorable, aside from the artwork and the coloring there. But when you get to the end, you're like, oh, okay, maybe. I might come back for issue number 2. So Soko was all right, but I'm very much on the fence, almost over the fence on the other side and the negative side for that one. Then we've got Darkwing Duck issue number 4. Yes, issue number 4. The Ken Hazer, David Mazzucchelli, Batman Year One homage cover. That was just on my own personal love. That was almost my cover of the week as well. So your top 3 cover of the weeks are this, Red Goblin by Philip Tan, and The Punisher by Matteo Scalera. But I like this book. It is straight up just Darkwing Duck gold. It is Darkwing Duck goodness. I had so much fun. So we got Bush, what's his name? The plant dude. I can't remember. Is it Bushwhack? Now I gotta look at this dude's name. Darkwing Duck. Oh, it's Darkwing Duck. No, it's not. What is his name? Bushroot. Bushroot. Sorry, forgot his name. Anyway, Bushroot, the plant villain, he's here. We're still dealing with the Morgana stuff. So it actually is dealing with something that is left over from the previous issue, and it concludes a story that was set up in issue 3, but at the same time was telling its own story, so it felt also still self-contained. And that's something that comic books used to do so well, that drew me in at a very young age, was have a subplot moving, have other things moving, have these different things moving and in place to keep the story moving forward, right? That's what Chris Claremont did with X-Men, so much so that there were things left dangling for years after he left. And then, you know, like, there's something the MCU didn't really do, was set up some things to be dangling after Endgame, for instance, to keep us threaded through. Darkwing Duck's doing that, so it's adding a little bit more layers to the animated series, because the animated series never really got to tell an overarching story. That being said, this book isn't going to change your life unless you've never read a comic book and you love Darkwing Duck and you read this and you're like, wow, comics are super fun. Because that's what a Darkwing Duck book should be, especially with the David Mazzucchelli, Ken Hazer homage cover. Come on. Then we got Harrower, issue number 3. This is a book that after issue 1, I was reading it and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to drop out of this book quickly. Then the end of issue 1 hooked me a little bit. 2, I was a little bored throughout. And then the end of 2 hooked me and I came back, and 3 was pretty solid. 3 is, so the Harrower is like a slasher figure, slasher icon in this world. And he is on the loose, and there's a bunch of kids partying, and he's just going through this party, just killing people. So this whole issue is just like blood and guts and action, and the artist, Bram Revel, does a fantastic job of keeping that very dynamic pace moving through, right? This does feel like some of the higher-pitched moments of a horror slasher film, right? There's some big revelations about some characters that are very obvious that they were coming, so I'm glad they didn't wait too long to reveal certain things. But 3 issues in, and Harrower continues to just, impresses the wrong word, but continuously surprises me in keeping me interested. And I mean that as a compliment. That doesn't sound like a compliment. I like Harrower the more I read it, issue to issue. So there you go. So that's what I read. Overall, Harrower keeps bringing me back. Darkwing Duck is just a fun comic. I almost said Spot. Soko was alright, not quite convinced on that one. Mighty Barbarians, like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with barbaric type characters. It was fun. Street Fighter Cammy. Y'all, there's like this bootylicious cover. It came from Great Wall of Comics. I would love, there's 3 different ones. I mean, I guess the green costume's the original, but, you know, I'm asking people, like, do you know where to get it? I guess Great Wall of Comics. I guess that's where we get it. Anyway, all 8 eyes. This was a pretty decent start. Some really solid artwork. Gunslinger spawned the best work I've seen Brett Booth do on this series yet, and it's always been awesome. Hitomi, not a lackluster ending. It was a solid ending, but it did feel a little clunky in parts. TerrorWar was a really solid debut. Great characters, great world, great concept, great artwork, and inker appreciation, y'all. Let's start pointing this out when they exist. DCeased, a very satisfying conclusion to that saga. The Flash, a really light and fun Flash issue. Nightwing, improving a little bit for me over the last few issues. World's Finest continues to be one of DC's finest. Superman gets better issue to issue. A perfect ending to the first arc and a perfect setup for this new direction of Superman. I am 180% on board. Silent Tale, some really great cartooning there if you want to check it out. Superboy, Man of Tomorrow let me down for sure. The Excellent was excellent. Hellcat was not. Hallows Eve was not either. Red Goblin was awesome. That Philip Tan cover is amazing. And The Amazing Spider-Man was okay. It's still an inconsistent run, but I'm a little bit more intrigued. Had a lot of fun with Warlock Rebirth, but the pick of the week is Punisher because Jason Aaron is doing some really powerful stuff with that book, both with the story, with the characters, and with the theme. And finally, this Darkwing Duck number 4 with Bushroot. Smell of the week. That's what you got. Cover of the week, smell of the week, pick of the week, books of the week, what I thought. What are you reading? What are you digging? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. I have been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Station, keep on reading. Pop, pop, boom!